Hello, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. Since 2016, I've been answering your questions, giving advice and inspiration to countless gamers. Here, you can ask questions in the comments and get your own videos as an answer. So I encourage you, enjoy by all means. But come back to visit with your friend, the Dungeon Tutor. Hello friends, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. A little too much? Yeah, okay, maybe it is a little too much. But, yeah. Dungeon Tutor, welcome. Yes, RPGaDay 2025. Day 8. Today's topic is Explore. And this is one I've actually been looking forward to, because I get to talk about a way of playing that modern gamers don't really get to appreciate all that often. So with Orcus's wand here, of sorts, I'm going to talk a little bit about an aspect of exploration that most people in learning modern role-playing games don't really get. So, let's begin. Number one, exploration is one of the pillars of role-playing games. Right there with combat, right there with actual interpersonal relationship roleplay. That's, yeah, every bit of as much a part of role-playing as anything else is exploring. And just like any other aspect, it can be diminished by the game master and the style of the campaign, or it can be accentuated and highlighted. Exploration is going into a dungeon and peeling back the fog of war, room at a time, finding out all of these traps and rooms and creatures and riddles and puzzles and things. I can't help but think this is still a little too much, so we're going to... I know, not as dynamic, but still fun. So, you are going through a place you've never been to before, risking your life on trying to find your way and make sure that you can find your way back out. Those are important aspects of exploration, yes, and those were the original aspects of it in the games that I explored as a younger man. I loved dungeon delving and finding rooms, and with my wits and all that I had learned from prior games, learning to recognize the dangers, learning to overcome challenges that I'd seen before. It was very much my skill as much as my character statistics in those early games. Nowadays, yes, a lot of times it's roll, see if you find it. If you don't, you suffer. If you do find it, roll to see if you overcome it. It's pretty simple and it's understandable. It fits in with the mechanics of the game. But back in the day, that wasn't how it was, because those skills only existed in a rare, small number of characters called thieves. And in a variety of other games that had those kind of skills, yeah, oftentimes it was roll to see if you see it, roll to see if you overcome it. That is an accepted way of dealing with those circumstances, and it's fine. I mean, it works, right? It's functional. No problem. So, exploring means succeeding at dungeoning. Finding the places, finding all the hidden places and the treasure. That is an important part of understanding dungeons and role-playing games. However, modern games have that too. Certainly. There are dungeon crawls in modern games. Absolutely. And many of them are just as devious, just as complicated as they've ever been. There are a lot of really interesting dungeons that are still being created to this day. And dungeon crawling, wherein almost the entirety of the adventure is taking place in a single dungeon, yeah, absolutely. Those are definitely there. I just saw a Kickstarter for the world's largest dungeon being made by AEG again. Cool. There you go. But sometimes what you're exploring isn't necessarily in a dungeon. And that brings up a style of play that is not very common anymore. And I want to talk about it and explain the attractiveness of this kind of an adventure. The idea of a hex crawl. Now, what is a hex crawl? A hex crawl is you start someplace that you know because it's all around you. You know where you're at. But beyond where you're at is the unknown. Nobody knows what's out there. It is a blank map. Beyond this point, here be monsters. And in a game like Dungeons & Dragons, you know there are monsters. But a part of the map is going to be blank. And that is your concern, because in a hex crawl, you're the one who's going to fill that map out. You start in a place, probably on the map somewhere, and from that point on, you seek out information and adventure in roughly equal measure. A big part of the success of a hex crawl is going from place to place and locating things of interest. Geographical features, sure. Monsters and signs of monsters, absolutely. Things of interest, like ruins, cave systems, things that might spell further adventure, yes. And you would note these on a map. Now, hex crawls have certain challenges to them that aren't found in other games. For instance, in a dungeon, at least the way they used to be, it was rather important to keep track of how much food you had, how much water you had, and especially how much light you had. In torches, lanterns and oil, magics, whatever you used. This was important because if your character can't see, if they're stuck down there for an extended amount of time, they'll need to eat and drink. These are essentials to survive. These become just as important when you're not in a dungeon, because as you are exploring around and doing your thing, you're going to get hungry. You're going to get thirsty. And you can't always count on there being a stream of clean water or game or foraging, forageable food, be it whatever. That is a challenge that is special for overland travel. And in a hex crawl, you're not following a road, usually. Although if you find a road, that may lead to more adventure. But you generally are going in through trackless wastes, or at the very least, somewhere you have no idea what threats and dangers and opportunities there are. Now, in a good hex crawl, not everything is terrible. There are going to be some beneficial encounters to find along the way. Because of the size and scope, it's also likely that you're going to run into things that aren't necessarily found just at their lair. So, wandering monsters, anyone? They make sense in a hex crawl. And just like in a dungeon, they aren't always good. Usually when something is out roaming around without, being in its lair, it's hunting, or maybe in the same boat as you are, where you are, looking for information, looking for profit. Maybe they are too, in which case you could definitely be clashing in interests. Maybe they've been chased by something bigger. So that last video that I did about motive comes in pretty handy here too. Everything's got a reason to do whatever it is that it does, just that purpose may change, and that might be all of the difference in the encounter. Now, hex crawls are a challenge. You may, if you really want to stick to the spirit of the old hex crawls, really track those important elements like the amount of food that you carry, the amount of water that you carry, and you may also want that light again. It eventually gets dark, right? And yeah, you may want to have some supplies like that. You also might want a lot of other supplies that aren't as necessary in the smaller dungeons. A place to sleep. A bedroll is certainly better than just crashing on the ground. And as a matter of fact, a canny game master may actually punish you if you don't have the kind of supplies that make camping out at night safe or at least comfortable. Maybe in modern games, enforcing exhaustion upon you if you are trying to sleep on the cold ground at night with no blanket, just your armor to keep you warm, which not the most comfortable. Can be done, by the way. You don't necessarily have to strip down to nothing to be able to sleep, but it's certainly not all that comfortable either. And you've got all this everything around you. As you go into the wilderness, you will eventually learn the boundaries and features of the places that you go through, but at any given point, unless you are coming back through terrain you already know, there's an element of what is out there, what could be out there. Is it the dreaded Tarrasque out there? I hope not. But what could it be? Is there anything at all? Maybe not. But potentially, the terror of the unknown, especially when you don't have any means of looking about you other than just to blunder into things and experience them, well, that becomes a challenge. Another challenge is, how does the party change when you're out of doors? Maybe you don't want the whole party blundering into something at one time. Maybe you'll send out a scout. Hey, think about all those stealthy characters who are really good in woods and other terrain. Maybe they'd be great scouts. Usually, yes, this is a good idea. But, maybe they're all needed clustered together so that one ambush will hit everybody. That's up to you. But, in general, those experiences are going to be a lot different than they would be inside the tight confines of a dungeon, where the party can maximize their firepower together, but that's because the threats are going to generally come from a more limited, perspective. As opposed to out in the wild, who knows what's going to hit you in what angle, what direction. From the skies, maybe? You have to keep your bases covered. You have to think ahead in situations so that you're smart and ready to survive when it all comes to task. And ultimately, too, overland adventures are a challenge for the game master. Not only the players figuring out tactics and how they're going to keep their resources up, the game master has to find reasons the players are going to want to do this. Besides just putting the quest objective somewhere in this map so that the party has to find it. Certainly, that can be done. But more likely, with the idea that there's other stuff out there. And if the players are diligent and search and do a complete job, maybe not every single hex needs to be cataloged, but a good chunk of them probably should be. You can reward them along the way by finding things that otherwise they never would have encountered. A ruined temple that still has some measure of the god's power and willing to be given as a blessing to players that show honor to this fallen god, perhaps. Maybe a mine the players could think about coming back to and exploiting ruthlessly. Sure. Maybe it's an academy that exists out in the wilds that offers an untrainable skill that the players could really use. The serendipity of finding such a thing in a hex crawl could be, wondrously effective for making the players happy that they went on this type of an adventure. Because the alternative is, if they have to drudge through, and it can be drudgery, pure drudgery, giving them motivations, giving them reasons to celebrate the journey and see some measure of profit in their toils and troubles can be really handy. And there's some good examples of adventures that have had hex crawls. There are some examples of adventures that had miserable hex crawls. Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, classic D&D adventure, opens with a hex crawl. You're tasked to go to the Barrier Peaks. You have to go through miles and miles of jungle. Not good jungle. You have guides, but it's brutal. It's a hex crawl. That's the kind of adventure some people crave. Because it is like a sandbox. It is wide open. Ultimately, you have control over where you go. What is your path going to look like by the time you're done? Are you going to somehow try to find a vantage so that you can see many hexes around? Fill in your map, looking for a signature landmark that you can key onto? Maybe. These are all ideas, and the unknown and the thrill of exploration is certainly what drives these kinds of adventures. They're not so common anymore. People have generally gotten more plot-oriented and story-oriented and have the plot spilled out for them an event at a time. Hex crawls don't work that way, and shouldn't work that way, to be honest. It's the players against all of the unknown. And that's a different kind of adventure altogether. It could be a very fun adventure if the players are open-minded enough to try it and really buy it and try as hard as they can without having the game master just kind of simp them through it. So, hex crawls. They are a way that we used to play role-playing games, and some role-playing games are still kind of played out that way. Some tables still enjoy a good hex crawl. If you want to try it, I strongly suggest it. Just hand your players an empty map, maybe with hexes on it. The hex paper is available. And just say, all right, I filled out where you're at, your forward camp. There you go. And maybe a few details on it. It doesn't have to be necessarily blank, especially if the party has a previous map. There might be something sketched out. They might be at an elevation where they can see beyond just one hex away in any direction. And then let them explore. Let them have a good time. Just some suggestions. Something that might work out well for you, I don't know. But certainly has worked in the past for me. I hope you like it. And I do hope that you enjoyed this enough that you want to see more, because I'll keep doing these videos. So if you want to, go ahead and like and subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. And if you have a comment about a journey that you experienced or something that really affected you related to a journey or something that happened on a journey that was particularly memorable, by all means, leave in the comments below. We'd all like to read it. It might even spur another video. Who knows? But I'm real happy that you were here, and I do hope to see you again. So I do hope that between now and that time in the future, that you, yes, you get a chance to roll some dice, to play some games, to have some fun. But stay safe out there, friends. Until that next time, farewell.